A few years ago, my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and I decided to take a spontaneous camping trip. While I hadn't camped much before, my girlfriend had fond memories of camping with her family and wanted to relive that experience with me. She went all out, purchasing new camping gear, including a spacious tent that featured a small window. I loved the idea of looking out at the night sky and waking up to sunlight streaming in. We arrived at the campsite in the afternoon, and since we were only staying for 2 nights, we wanted to make the most of it. That first evening was peaceful. We set up our tent, relaxed, and went to bed early. I spent some time lying in my sleeping bag, gazing out of the little window at the stars. The next day was filled with outdoor activities like fishing, hiking, and simply enjoying the sunshine. By evening, we were exhausted and ready for another early night. As we settled into the tent, I noticed something outside the window, a faint movement. Before I could fully process it, my girlfriend whispered, "Did you see that too?" We both sat up, peering through the window. At first, everything seemed calm. Then my girlfriend gasped in horror. Sitting on a tree branch about 30 to 40 feet away was a person wearing a creepy, fake presidential mask. They were swinging their legs like a child on a swing. We froze in terror. The whole time we'd been there, we hadn't seen another soul, and now this masked figure was watching us. For about 5 minutes, we silently watched them. Then, the figure jumped down from the tree and began pacing around. Eventually, they stopped and faced the tent directly. We could hear them laughing under the mask. Suddenly, they started waving at us in an exaggerated, erratic motion. Then, they stopped abruptly and shouted in a muffled voice, "Bye, guys!" before sprinting into the woods. The rest of the night, we stayed awake, terrified, and glued to the window. The figure never returned, and by morning, there was no trace of them. Although we were physically unharmed, the encounter left a lasting impression. Since then, we've only gone camping in cabins with lockable doors. In the summer of 2011, I planned a camping trip with a group of friends. We had talked for months about how great it would be to escape into nature together. No phones, no distractions, just living in the moment. However, as the trip approached, one by one, all four of my friends canceled for various reasons. I was devastated, especially since I had spent a significant amount of money on gear and clothing. Still, I decided to go alone rather than postpone it for another year. The trip was scheduled for mid-July, the perfect time to camp in the far northeast. So I packed my gear and headed to Acadia National Park. To my surprise, I had an amazing time, at least for the first 2 days. The solitude was a refreshing challenge, keeping me busy with setting up camp, collecting firewood, and preparing meals. Nighttime, however, was nerve-wracking. The unfamiliar sounds of the forest tested my nerves, but by the second and third nights, I had adjusted. On the final night, a strange encounter turned my peaceful trip into a nightmare. I woke up in the middle of the night with discomfort and reluctantly went into the woods to relieve myself. On my way back to camp, I saw a flashlight moving around near my tent. Alarmed, I quickly turned off my headlamp and hid behind a tree to observe. Soon, a second flashlight appeared, and I overheard two men talking. One of them mentioned, "He was just here," suggesting they had been watching me. Terrified, I stayed hidden and watched as they inspected my campsite and eventually walked away. I waited until dawn, packed up quietly, and left the park. Before leaving, I reported the incident to park rangers, but they had no record of anyone patrolling the area that night. The experience left me shaken, and it was a long time before I considered solo camping again.